Unlike our poll, which shows Walker by 1, 47-46, Marist has Walker by 10 points Evers by 10 points head-to-head against Walker, and Evers by 8 points if you include the Libertarian and other parties. So that's a much bigger margin. We have Baldwin up by 10 points. They have her up by 14, I believe, so a little bit bigger margin there. But the governor's race is way different between our two polls.
Interesting.
Back to your poll, this, as we said, has gone back and forth.
If we just focus on our data, we have had Walker ahead by 2 points in June, a dead even tie at 46 in August. Then we had Evers ahead by 5 3 weeks ago, and now we have Walker by 1. So if you look across all of those, it sure looks like a toss-up race to me. Outside polling, including Marist, has had Evers ahead, leaving out this new one today, by 7, by 5, by 4, by 2, and by 2. So I look at that and say most of that gives Evers a little bit of an advantage, but it's still within the margin of error of those polls. And for my poll, which is the only one I'm really responsible for, it looks like a toss-up.
And it looks like this is all along party lines so far?
The partisans are completely lined up with their nominee. Over 90% of Republicans for Walker, over 90% of Democrats for Evers. It's the independents that have provided some dynamic here. Last month we had independents breaking to Evers by 20 points, which was an extraordinarily large number. This time it's more back to where you might think it would be a 6-point advantage, but that's exactly the group that can fluctuate, be affected by advertising, by news stories, and we're coming up on debate season for all the races.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are pointing toward turnout and the enthusiasm in each party. You measured that as well.
We've looked at that. We've been watching enthusiasm all year. Democrats have had a consistent edge with the exception of one poll where Republicans were slightly ahead. Last month we had Democrats 11 points more enthusiastic. This time they're 6 points more enthusiastic. Republicans seem to have gotten a little boost in enthusiasm over these last 3 weeks.
Is that because of the Judge Kavanaugh?
Kavanaugh is obviously the biggest piece of news in that interval of 3 weeks, but showing it's directly linked to Kavanaugh is much weaker. We saw an exceptional number, 37% that said they had watched the hearings live, which is a big audience. But there were no partisan differences in who watched, and there were very minimal gender differences in who watched. So it doesn't look like either side was strongly more likely to be watching or engaged by it.
All right, let's turn to the Senate race.
Senate race, you have that 10-point margin, 53 for Baldwin, 43 for Vukmir. That's unchanged from last time. It was 53-42 last time. So Vukmir's picked up 1 point, but that race really hasn't moved. One of the key differences between the two is Baldwin is winning more of the independent vote than Evers is. The Democrats, both Democrats are winning a majority of independents, but her margin is bigger with independents. The other thing is Evers is only about breaking even with non-college white women, whereas Baldwin is winning that group pretty handily. And so that's another difference between the two races.
AG's race, that's getting tight.
AG's race tightened. If the governor's race moved in a Republican direction, the AG's race moved in a Democratic direction. From a 7-point Schimmel lead last time to a 4-point lead now, 47-43. This is the race where the candidates still have the most to do to get themselves known to the public. Even after being in office for 4 years, Schimmel is not recognized by 46% of the respondents, and Josh Kaul is not recognized by 81%. Now, we're about to hit the prime advertising season. There'll be a lot of ads for both candidates. So over the next 4 weeks to see how that moves will be really interesting. And really the debates, we're kind of lucky this time with all 3 of the races are having at least 2 and some 3 and I think maybe 4 for one of them. But there are a lot of debates coming. I should also say our poll was completed before the Monday night Senate debate. Okay. So we did not have any of the effects of that in our data.
And there's an AG debate tomorrow, I think on Wisconsin Public Television.
Yes.
And then the Senate Senate debates Saturday here on Channel 3.
That's right.
Right? And then there's another set of debates. I don't have them all in my head, but there are a lot of them. So
There's a lot
tune
of
in,
them.
tune
There's a
in
lot of
early
them.
and often to see them.
Be informed before
Yes.
you get to head to the polls.
The AG's race especially, that's a really important office, but it's not in the front of the news all the time. So I hope the coverage in the debates will help people tune in and understand that race.
And you have one more poll before
One
the big
more
night.
poll?
All
One
right.
more?
We'll see you then.
We'll see you
Alrighty.
one more time.
Charles,
Thanks,
thank you.
Charles.